Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the True Sweet High podcast. Today's guest is Joe Stone. Joe is head of audience development for LA-based podcast production company Jam Street Media. He is also the founding member of What They Signed Up For, a nonprofit telling the stories of OIF and OEF veterans, and is a U.S. Army service-disabled combat veteran who served in places like Iraq, Afghanistan, and Guantanamo Bay. His 15-year enlisted military career was ultimately successful but tumultuous. He earned more than a dozen medals, including a Bronze Star Medal as a young Sergeant E5 during his first tour in Iraq. He also, twice, went through a divorce while in uniform, had friends who took their own lives or succumbed to their own chemical dependencies, and struggled with his own reintegration and coming to grips post-traumatic stress. Joe currently lives in Vancouver, Washington, with his wife Elizabeth and their blended family of 4, plus 2 dogs and a cat. Thank you guys for being here for another episode. I can't wait for you to hear his story. Although we have not met yet, I'm just so excited that he is on here today. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's a creation tool that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can also make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Hey Joe, how's it going?
Good. Hi, Annette. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for being on here. I'm so excited. I have to I'm always going to talk about this and I apologize because I'm never going to get over it. But for everyone listening, Joe made my dream come true when our mutual friend Sarah, I actually served with her at El Paso. He had created her website, and so when I was looking for someone to do mine, she said, "You need to use Joe. He is awesome." And she just kept raving about him. And then I reached out to him and I told him what I wanted, and then he created it, and it was like, it was just so amazing. And so for any of you that go to my website, he is the designer. He made all the magic happen, and now I'm just learning how to do updates, which is absolutely fun. Actually, it's not that bad. I'm
No.
learning and it's fun. So when after I see the end work, I'm like, I did it on myself. But so thank you, always thank you, Joe,
Oh yeah.
for bringing it to fruition, and I love it. So
Oh, you're welcome. It was fun time making it. I like working with you.
thank you. It was awesome. So tell us about yourself and what you do. You do so many things,
Oh
but we
geez.
need to tell everybody else about it.
Where do I even begin?
I know.
So I guess the best way to describe what I do is I'm a multimedia producer. So I create all kinds of different things from like websites, like you said. I do graphic design work. I'm a photographer. I've done video work, podcasting. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now. I recently graduated with my bachelor's in communications from the Academy of Art University in San Francisco. I did all my schooling online. And thanks to the GI Bill, I was able to afford it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I've been kind of working on that stuff for the last few years, getting involved with veteran stuff on the side. VFW, I've done some other projects too. Got involved with a book project for a little while. I still do on this. I still help them out too. It's a book called What They Signed Up For. It's a collection of veteran stories from veterans who served in Iraq and Afghanistan during the global war on terrorism. It's a great collection of stories. If you get a chance to pick up the book, I highly recommend it. Not just to read my story. It's just one small piece in there, but there's so many different stories in that book from all kinds of different people that served from, the guys who did all the door kicking. There was, truck drivers, logisticians, stuff like that. People from all walks of life, from different varied backgrounds, varied MOSs, jobs there while they were there, and males and females. And I mean, it was for someone who'd served and done multiple combat tours. It was an eye-opening read for myself, surprisingly.
Wow.
So yeah, if you guys, just a quick plug. If you ever a chance, I'd recommend reading that book, or trying to. It's a tough read.
Could you give me the name of that again?
It's called What They Signed Up For.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds like a phenomenal book. I saw your posts on it, and I was like, wow, I know that one's going to be pretty deep.
Yeah, it's a tough read. I don't think I've even read the entire book myself yet, because the stories are kind of hard to. There's a lot of relatable stuff in there for anybody who's gone overseas and served in those combat zones before. So it's a tough one to get through, but it's great too if you've been over there yourself, because it kind of lets you know that I'm not only are there stories about what they've done while they were there, but also like their transition back home. So it helps. It also helps you realize that, hey, the stuff I'm going through is not unique. There's other people out there going through the same thing. I'm not alone in my little quest here,
Yeah.
Yeah. So before that, I have such a hard time talking about myself sometimes.
I'm the same way.
So I guess I'll go to my military career. Kind of just keep working backwards. So I served in the Army. I did 15 years total. So I actually had a break in service right there in the middle, about the 7-year mark. So I did 2 different tours. I'm sorry, 2 different breaks, 2 different periods of service. The last tour I was stationed at Fort Drum, New York, and Fort Carson, Colorado, and I deployed to Afghanistan and Iraq. I went to Afghanistan with 10th Mountain, and then I went to Iraq with 4th ID in Fort Carson. My tour before that, or my period of service before that, I was stationed at Fort Lewis the entire time, all 7 years. I used to joke around that I was institutionalized there because I was in the same company for the entire time. So,
oh my gosh, that's like not normal at all.
No, it was horrible. So I got there as a private in E1 as a mechanic. When I left there 7 years later, I was an E5 promotable, and I was a motor sergeant. And I'd been there for so long. I was stationed. I was with a military police company at the time. I'd been there for so long. I had a guy that was there and had PCS to Korea and back 3 different times while I was there. And like the third time, he's like, "Holy cow, dude, you are still here." I'm like, "Yeah, I can't leave." I don't know what it was. I mean, every time I came down to orders while I was there a few different times, but every time I came down to orders, the unit got orders to deploy. So I ended up getting stuck there. And I deployed to Egypt while I was there. I went to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, right after shortly after 9/11, to do the detainee mission down there with them. And then I went to Iraq in 2004, and we got there right. So we got there right at the very beginning of 2004, and it was kind of a quiet time when we first got there, and then the insurgency kicked off about 3 months in, and things got real crazy that year. And that's the reason why I had a break in service. Because after I did that deployment, I had such a tough time with it. My married life back home, my family life had kind of fallen apart while I was deployed. When I got back, I kind of blamed everything, all my personal stuff and everything else was going on, kind of on the Army and my experiences. And when they asked me to re-enlist, I said, no, to put it nicely.
Oh, wow.
So, but I quickly found out when I got out, I had a really tough time reintegrating. In fact, I would even say that I didn't integrate at all, really. I remember like when they tried to put you through all the transition programs, or when you get out. Like when I first got out, they didn't really have any transition programs. Really, it was like they tell you to go to I can't remember, like TAP or whatever. I think they called it They called it something else
ACAP?
at the time. They called it, it was ACAP.
Yeah.
So I went through ACAP, but the time all you had to do was a bare minimum. It was like you had to fill out a survey or a questionnaire, and that was it. You weren't required to do anything else. And I was being stubborn, and I said, you know what, I got this. I'm not going to have any problem finding a job when I get out.
Right.
And so I pretty much just turned my equipment in where it was, CIF, did the bare minimum I could, and got out. I ended up going back to ACAP a couple months after I got out for them to help me find a job. But anyways, I got out. I bounced around. Within 6 months, I had 3 different jobs. I was still kind of numb for my tour. I kind of had like a, I don't give a fuck attitude about everything. With anybody I had a relationship with, like I went through a divorce. Like as soon as I got back, I tried dating, and that was just a really horrible experience because I just treated everybody like crap, and that was totally unlike me. I guess I just had a different outlook on life coming back, and then normal things seemed really trivial and not very important, I guess. So I struggled for a while, and I got to the point where I ended up getting a pretty decent job, and I was getting paid well, but I was super unhappy. And like I remember driving to work at like 5 o'clock in the morning, and then like doing the same thing day in and day out, and then sitting in traffic on the way home, stop and go rush hour traffic. And I'm like, I can't do this. There's no way. And I hated everything about it. Like I couldn't relate to anybody with my experiences. In fact, one of my other jobs I had before that one I was just talking about, I quit because of an experience I had. I was working as a mechanic. I was pulling a truck out of the shop, and as I was pulling it out, there's some junk that's piled up outside the shop, and the tire of the truck I was pulling out grazed whatever it was that piled up out there, and it blew the tire out. And as you can imagine, as a combat vet who'd been through that stuff, it freaked me out. And the guys there at the shop started laughing at me. And I mean, you expect that from maybe a civilian or something like that. Most of these guys that I was working with were all vets. There were some peacetime vets or was that didn't serve the majority of their career. They didn't deploy at all, or whatever it was. So I mean, I guess maybe it was funny, but I didn't think it was that funny at the time. It really kind of crushed me, hurt my feelings a little bit. And so I ended up calling I had a buddy of mine who I deployed to Egypt with years prior to that. He was on recruiting duty in Las Vegas. I called him up and I asked him to put me back in. Eventually, after the second job, I guess once I left that one job, and then got the new one, and kind of went through all the day in day out rigmarole of like commuting and not really getting by and kind of hating life. I ended up going back in. But I remember like when I got there, I signed into Fort Drum. The immense relief I felt being around other people who had the same experiences. In fact, I actually ran into a guy at replacement who I'd served with in Iraq that last year, the year before that. And that was huge. It was like being home, I guess.
Yeah.
I felt immediately comfortable being there, and it was the strangest thing. I'm 3,000 miles from my home state, and I felt like I belonged. It was really strange. And so I knew I'd kind of made the right choice at that point. Or at least I felt like I did. So I got to my first unit there, and when I signed in, they told me, "Don't even bother unpacking your bags." Okay.
Oh,
Yeah. All right. So they ended up deploying to Afghanistan a few months later, and we went to what was it? The northeast corner of Afghanistan. It was a Korengal Valley. I don't know if you've ever heard that name before, but it's kind of the scene of a lot of different stories that have come out of Afghanistan. Different books have been written about that area, different movies. The names of those escape me now for some strange reason, but it was a very
a lot of action that happened over there.
He was, yeah, for our, I mean, as a mechanic, I didn't see a whole lot because I was mostly on our little base or fob or whatever. But yeah, our guys that were out there, that was with a Cav squadron, 371 Cav.
Oh yeah.
And they, yeah, they had action all the time. It was a different thing too, because what made Afghanistan different from Iraq, in my experience, was that we didn't feel like we were fighting a ghost over there. Like, if we were fighting somebody, we could like fight back. You know, if like someone, attacked us, whatever it was, and ambushed us, we could fight back, and we had somebody to shoot at or whatever. It wasn't so demoralizing, as an IED, and then like not be able to do anything about it, just take it, or our incoming mortars or whatever it was. But we had a lot of different action over there. And we lost a few guys. One of them was one of the biggest events we had over there. We had a Chinook go down. In fact, I think you might know of the story too. They were doing a kind of a mountaintop extraction, and the helicopter, came in, did one of those things where it kind of just puts the back end of the bird down on the ground a little bit, and it kind of continues to hover while they, unload people or whatever it was, or load people back up. And during that time, the pilot apparently had gotten spooked, from what they think, and because there was close to the LZ, there was a little fire that had been burning earlier in the day, and apparently the rotor wash had kind of kicked up some embers, and he thought he saw tracer fire, and so he jerked the controls a little bit. When he did, one of the rotor blades hit a tree nearby, and the bird tumbled down the mountain and took 10 lives with it. And then that was we had 4 guys from our squadron in there, and one of them was Lieutenant Colonel Joe Fenney, which there's a fob in Afghanistan named after him now.
Yes.
So Lieutenant Colonel Fenney, he was I didn't have much experience with him before or at all. I mean, I had a couple different interactions with him, but the one interaction I did have with him was it was huge. It was the strangest thing. So I just got into Fort, I just got to Fort Drum, and shortly after I got there, of course, being the new guy, I got immediately put on the duty roster. And got stuck on staff duty. Like, my first week there, I didn't know anybody from anyone. It's about the worst possible duty you can do, be on squadron staff duty and not know who the officers are, who the sergeant majors are, who anybody is.
Oh God.
Yeah, so I was a little stressed out. At the end of the day, when everyone was leaving, Colonel Fenney came down, and as he left, he came over and talked to me, and he's he didn't recognize me. So he asked me who I was and, what unit I was in. And he talked to me for about like 20, 30 minutes probably.
Oh, wow.
It was a weird experience for me to have. I never had that kind of experience with any other officer when I was in. He had genuine interest in who I was, where I was coming from, my experiences, my family. That made a huge impact on me. Like, okay, I've never had anybody do that before. And it was, so I thought super highly of the guy. And so when we heard that the aircraft went down, it was it was tough. And for me to I'm going to back up a little bit on my story here a little bit. So I didn't deploy on time with my unit. I had deployed like 3 months late because my wife at the time was pregnant. And she was due within the first 3 months of the deployment. So they had a policy there on Fort Drum that if your spouse is pregnant and due within those first 3 months, you stay back for the birth of your child, which was kind of cool. I never heard of that happening before. And
no, that's really good.
Yeah, and it was nice to be able to do that. But the tough part was that Colonel Fenney's wife was pregnant too, and due within those first 3 months. And he didn't stay back. He deployed forward with all of his guys on time. Because that's kind of the person he was, I'm not going to ask, somebody to do something I'm not going to do myself or whatever.
Right.
So I was actually on rear D at the time when his crash happened.
Oh, God.
When they announced it, they had an emergency family readiness group meeting. So all the spouses and stuff came in, people who were on rear D came in there, and the rear detachment commander had announced it, and you could just, you could hear like the air kind of just escape the room.
Yeah.
Because he had that kind of an impact on everybody. And then immediately I thought about his wife and his, and I had his kid was born not long before that. Was within weeks before it.
Right.
And so he never met his child. But it was a crushing thing to see his family go through and doing that on rear D, and then knowing that I stayed back and was able to see my kid, whoever it was, be born, and he wasn't, and it just kind of made you feel like crap afterwards a little bit. And that was a tough one to get through. I mean, that is a different experience on rear D, having to see that side of it. Like I never seen that side of the Army before. It's one thing being forward and having things happen, but you don't get to see what happens back home, how that affects other people too.
Yes. Absolutely.
Gosh, yeah, and that was a really tough one to get through right there. Yeah.
Did you grow up with a military family?
Kind of. My parents, none of my parents served. I had a grandfather who was a World War II Navy vet. Mm-hmm. He was an officer. I want to say he was a Lieutenant JG, I think was his final grade, Lieutenant junior grade. And then I had an uncle who was in the Marine Corps, and he was and he served in Desert Storm. Mm-hmm. And I also had another uncle who was National Guard. He was a AGR, served active duty, and I used to see him all the time as a kid in his uniform. And that's kind of what I kept seeing. That I was like, oh, I want to be like that when I grow up. I want to be in the Army too. And so that was kind of like when I as long as I can remember, I'd always want to be a soldier as my life, kind of my dream job.
Wow.
Yeah. And
So what made you decide to do everything that you're doing now? Is that something you were interested as a kid?
Yeah, I mean, in a weird way, kind of. I've always been really artsy and creative.
Okay.
But at the same time, my dad was a businessman. He owned his own business. Okay. And it was kind of understood that, if you wanted to, be successful, you're going to have sort of a business mindset, and you need to get some sort of hard skill sort of job. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I ended up joining the Army, where it wasn't do that for a while. And when I finally got out of the Army for the final time, being a mechanic was kind of what I knew and what I understood, and I was good at it. So I was kind of thought that's kind of what I had to do, but I was struggling because like I'd put my body through so much while I was having a hard time doing that physically anymore. So I knew I needed to find something different to do. And what had helped me was I was at the time this was roughly 4 years ago. I was doing some freelance writing. I was getting into freelance writing because I was trying to explore that side of myself, and I've always wanted to write. Mm-hmm. And I found a veteran centric sort of news agency, you want to call it, I guess. It's called Lima Charlie News, and it's run by a guy named Anthony Lopresti, and he's a lawyer in New York. He's not a veteran, but his goal was to make a thing where veterans could kind of get involved in this sort of stuff and write and get involved in news. So everybody inside the organization is all veterans but him. So anyways, I started writing for him, did a few articles for him, and I was having an issue with trying to bridge that gap, professionally, trying to make that adjustment from doing some sort of hard skilled labor stuff to more media minded stuff. And I was at a breaking point in my professional life that I needed to find something else to do. And so I remember talking to him one time. We set up a phone call, and for like, an hour, we talked about things that I like to do, and goals and aspirations and stuff like that. And he kind of convinced me that I needed to do something that was more creative. And then there's jobs for it out there. And so I started researching. I hadn't done any college yet. I was 35, I guess, at the time, 36. I hadn't really done any college. I did a couple college classes, hadn't taken it very seriously. And I was like, I was just kind of in the process of losing a job because of my my back problems. So I was like, well, you know what? I just needed to go back to school full time. This is a good opportunity to do it. I need to do it. Mm-hmm. So I ended up doing some searching around for different degree programs. And at first I was wanting to get into some sort of sustainability focused job. So I started a degree program at a college, a now defunct college in Colorado called Ecotech. I did a couple quarters there, and it was, business administration stuff that I was kind of focused on. And I did a communications course while I was there, and I really liked it. And so when the VA told me I had to find a different school to go to because this one had lost its accreditation, or was losing its accreditation, I started searching around, and that's where I found the Academy of Art University. They had a perfect program for me because it was their communications program wasn't just writing, and it wasn't just it was a variety of different mediums. So it gave me the opportunity to try out, to improve my writing some more than I already had, and also get involved, try to, do video work. I could do podcasting and radio, which I really like. 'Cause I have a ton of interest in I get bored of things really easily, and I like to learn new things all the time too. So I'm always wanting to try new things. Mm. So it was like the perfect degree for me. I never, lost interest in things. I did social media coursework quite a bit, actually. I took 5 or 6 courses on social media alone, between, marketing and strategy, crowdfunding, all kinds of different stuff. Did that. I did a few semesters of radio, produced my own weekly radio show.
Yeah.
Gosh, what else was there? I did a bunch of radio work, a bunch of video work, blogging, video blogs, YouTube stuff. I even did graphic design work while I was there. Gosh, there was so much stuff that I learned. I love it. The problem is that it makes me a jack of all trades, and I'm not gonna say a master of none, but I'm really good at a lot of things, but a master at none of them at the same time. Which is fine. I have, I'm multi-versed and stuff. So I'm in my current job right now, working with Jam Street Media, a job I got through one of my professors at the academy. Asked me on to work for a startup because of that, which is cool.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Because I could do so many different things. Because I even built the radio station's website there for the school. I actually redesigned it because the one that I had there was pretty horrible at the time. So I did that. I ran their social media stuff for a while, and for a few years. And even I did that after I graduated as well for a little while until they found somebody else to replace me recently. But yeah, no, I do a lot of different stuff. I'm always busy doing something.
I know. I see it. And you've done a lot of different types of photography too.
Yeah.
I think the last ones I see, I don't even remember. They're just amazing though. They're so creative and so not something I'm used to seeing. So it stands out, and it seems like you've had a lot of fun. And I think you just went to Podfest or Pod.
Oh yeah. I went to oh geez. It wasn't Podfest. Podfest is coming up in a couple of weeks.
I don't remember.
Podcast Movement.
Yeah, that's it. Yep.
Yeah, I went to Podcast Movement Evolutions in Los Angeles a couple of weeks ago. And that was pretty awesome.
Really?
Yeah, because So I'm not huge into podcasting. Like I don't ever have time to listen to podcasts, which is horrible for somebody who actually works in podcasting. But it's because I can't listen to something while I'm working on something else. Like I can't focus on two things at once unless I'm like doing something with my hands or whatever. If I'm driving or maybe cutting the grass or doing some sort of chores, then maybe I could listen to something at the same time. But if I'm actually trying to work, I can't do it.
Yeah.
So anyways, I've been listening to some various podcasts for the last couple of years. And so while I was there at this thing, I was actually able to meet people who I'd listened to already.
That's awesome.
Which is awesome. So like there was a guy named James Cridlin who does a thing called Pod News. It's like a daily podcast news podcast. It's like 5 or 6 minutes long. I listen to it just about every morning.
Oh wow!
So I met him, and he's got a website and a daily newsletter comes out for podcasting news, and it's really great for what I do because I do a lot of blogging too and social media work. So I kind of stay up on what's going on in the podcasting world. God, who else did I meet there? I met so many other people, and I met so many new people too. It was a really crazy event. Like they just, like one of the nights they had an iHeart Radio sponsored party. It was
That's
like one of those
exciting.
It was kind of cool. It was like an open bar kind of thing where they it was all inclusive, paid for everything. You just showed up, and it was a networking event, so you just kind of go in there and hung out. You could have a few drinks if you wanted to, and I mean, it's completely open bar, so you can have as many drinks as you wanted to in the 3 or 4 hours that it was open.
Oh my gosh, that's
it was pretty wild. I mean, it was in all the big names, all the big name guys, CEOs from different podcast companies were there. Kind of just chit chat with everybody, and it was just a really kind of a cool event. And I met a lot of different people from different places, and I don't know. It was the only problem with that party was just really loud. Like there's a DJ there, it was doing really good music, but it was just way too loud. Like you had to scream into the person's ear next to you so they could hear you.
that is kind of difficult. Yeah.
But it was a fun event. I mean, it was down at the Millennium Biltmore Hotel. The actual event was, which is a very old hotel right in the middle of downtown Los Angeles. Like they have a bunch of movies have filmed there, like Ghostbusters was filmed there, or part of Ghostbusters was filmed there, like the hotel scene.
That's awesome.
So it was just really neat. And I went to LA expecting. I don't know if you've ever been to LA before, but
yeah, I was raised in California.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I've never been. I mean, I think I went there as a kid. Well, I went there as a kid one time when I was like 5 to go to Disneyland or wherever, but I hadn't been back there since. And I kind of went down with the expectation of hating it because you always hear all these stories about the traffic and everything else, and just like this is gonna be a horrible experience.
There are some nice parts.
Yeah, it turns out I actually loved it. Like I got down there, I'm like, this is pretty nice. I like this.
Yeah. It is fun. You just have to see the nice parts.
Yeah, I mean, even the bad parts weren't that bad either. I mean, some of the bad parts weren't that bad. I mean, it was, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, you walk around downtown, it's not bad there. Our hotel was about 1.5 miles from downtown. It wasn't the greatest area, but I mean, you never felt that really unsafe. I mean, even if it was kind of the dirtier parts of town, but it was, I don't know, it was nice and warm in February. It was 70 degrees. I couldn't complain. Like it was, 30 degrees back home and raining.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm like, this is awesome. All
exactly. Right. Did they offer workshops there? Because I know I went to the Military Influencer Conference last September, and they had like little breakout sessions with workshops. One was on podcasting, and that was really motivating for me.
Essentially, the whole thing was workshops. It was so they had like 3 different tracks depending on what you did in podcasting. If you were a creator, if you were like podcast professional, like a producer, someone on the back end or whatever, and they had different tracks you go through and listen to different people from different agencies or whatever it was talking about certain things. Like I had a press pass when I was there because I was helping write stories for a podcast business journal while I was down there. So I got to go to all the different sides of it. And so they had, stuff about analytics and the back end stuff. There was stuff about how to create, better content, ones on how to market your podcast, how to get funding. God, there was just a ton of stuff. It was like just 3 days of just nonstop information. It was hard to absorb it all.
Oh my
Yeah, no,
gosh.
it was a really great event. If
So
you ever get
you're
a chance to go to one of those, like a podcast movement one, they're awesome.
yes. Yes, I definitely want to go to one now that I'm doing
Yeah, I mean, you definitely get. I
podcasts.
mean, the tickets are expensive for any of those kinds of things, but in this case, I mean, I think it's definitely well worth the money. I mean, not just in the knowledge. Even if you have a fair amount of knowledge in podcasting, just the networking contacts you make alone there, and just it was. I think that was worth it by itself.
That's what I think. I think any type of networking event is pretty much worth it because of the amount of you just meet so many different people, so many different areas, and then the contacts and the friendships, and there's so many different things. Because I never, when I went to MIC, I wasn't really sure. I didn't. I mean, I knew who was going to be there. I knew some people that were going to show up, but I wasn't sure what to expect. But when I left there, I felt more. I felt motivated and more sure of
Oh yeah,
the fact that I knew that this was the path I wanted to be on because I just loved it and it was exciting and it's just yeah I think I always encourage people to go to a
yeah. No,
networking
I
event.
totally agree. I felt the same way about that place. It was. I remember when I got back, like the first couple of days after getting back home, it was like you kind of had that little kind of the blues afterwards. Like, man, I really missed it. That was a lot of fun. Like, I want to go back.
Yeah, that's how I felt when I left. This one was in DC, so it was right by the house, but now I'm going to actually go to San Antonio for the next one because I know I learned so much and I was definitely pumped. I was like right away bought my ticket for next year, so or this year now. Jeez. So so now you own okay, so what do you own? You have Joe Stone
Yeah,
Photography.
yeah. So I mean, I don't really have an actual business entity, I guess. I've had my own in the past, but I shut them down while I was going to school because I was getting too overwhelmed with school and trying to maintain a business front and all that stuff. So I shut all that stuff down. But
Right.
I pretty much do freelance work now on my own. So yeah, so
Okay.
on Facebook I have Joe Stone Photography, which I do all my photography stuff through, and then I have a separate one, Joe Stone Media, which was kind of a rebrand from my previous business that I had, and I just kind of put my name on there. Just kind of so it encompasses everything else that I do. Um, but yeah,
Awesome.
so the photography one's at
And
Joe Stone Photo, and the media one's at Joe Stone Media.
okay. And you're based out of
Yeah,
Washington
so
State.
I'm in Southwest Washington.
Yeah.
I'm in Vancouver, which is really it's in the Portland, Oregon metro region. So a lot of times it's just easier to say I'm from
Okay.
Portland because that's the closest thing. If I tell them I'm from Vancouver, they're like, "Oh, BC? No."
No, not that one. Oh my gosh. Well, geez, yeah, well, first of all, yes, I'm gonna get that book because I know those types of stories are just so hard to tell, but it just gives you a different perspective, and I think people need to see stuff like that. They need to read stuff like that. It's not there's so much more than just going overseas and then coming back. It's as not easy, but
Yeah.
people just don't
Oh,
understand. So I know that's going to be a
no, it is, and
difficult
it's
thing
great
for you.
for, I mean, not just veterans to, like I'd mentioned before, but people who had those didn't have those experiences at all and wanted to maybe better understand, their
Yes.
spouses or their siblings or whatever it was, or their friend who'd served and came back a little bit different, or it was, why they were struggling the way they were, or maybe still are, or whatever. It's super insightful. It's such a great tool. And like I said,
Yeah.
for myself, like when I was reading some of those stories about some of the women veterans in there, like I had heard of all the MST stuff, the military sexual trauma things before, but I didn't realize it was so
Mhm.
prevalent. Like it was a constant fear
Oh
for women
yeah.
veterans when they were served overseas. Like it just, I don't know. I didn't know that until I read it. Like I served
Okay.
in units with females, and I had plenty of female soldiers myself as an NCO, and even then caught me off guard. Like I had no idea it was that kind of situation over there. So it was certainly eye opening for me because I had some female soldiers of mine that didn't transition very well when they got out, and kind of struggle with homelessness and drugs and stuff like that. And a lot of it they said was, I know a lot of it was based on the MST stuff. Stuff I found out later after the fact, after I got out and they talked to me or it was, but it was just really hard for them to deal with. But like I said, it was just totally eye opening for me. I'm so glad I was involved with that project.
Wow, that is definitely that is a hard topic, especially now. It happens to both men and women, and it is hard to talk about. Nobody, it's hard. But yeah, so that's amazing that you were part of that project. What a meaningful thing to do. It's been a great
amazing thing too. So we've also go through and we do speaking events at local colleges and stuff like that. And there's a few of us from the book that'll show up and we'll talk about our stories and answer questions of people in the audience. And it's been really impactful.
Wow, that's amazing. Wow. I love that. I love being able to go and educate college kids, especially because they just, they don't know. They're still growing. They're still trying to grow up and figure out what they want to do. But to see the rest of the world is something that's it doesn't always happen. They get so secluded in just what they're doing. They need to open up their eyes and see what's going on in the rest of the world. So that's awesome. Especially now that we have college kids, right? It's like, oh my gosh. That's a whole other topic. But well, thank you, Joe. Seriously, I'm so excited that you wanted to be on here to, this is all new for me, but it's been fun and I love it, and being able to connect with people like you just definitely changes lives. So
well, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
I'm so glad. Well, thank you, and have a great day.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Thank you for listening to the Truths We Hide podcast, created by A Wild Ride Called Life. To find out more about our mission, visit www.awildridecalledlife.com.